In the northern outskirts of Ridgeway, Minnesota, beyond the empty parking lots and shuttered factories, there is a road that most people in town pretend doesn't exist. The trees on both sides bend inward like they're trying to hide whatever lies at the end. And at the end of that road stands a building that once represented everything Ridgeway hoped to become. It is covered in vines now, its windows shattered, its hallways rotting. But decades ago, Ridgeway Academy was the pride of the entire region, a place where parents believed their children's future would begin. Today, all that remains is a decaying shell of the dreams a town could not hold on to. Ridgeway in the late 1970s and early 1980s was a town fighting for survival. The local steel plant, the biggest employer, started laying off workers. The plastics factory cut its production shifts. Families moved away. Houses went up for sale and stayed that way. Downtown, stores that once sold hardware, clothes, or toys began closing, one after another. People worried Ridgeway would become another forgotten Midwestern town swallowed by economic decline. Then came a man named Charles Whitmore, the new district superintendent, who pitched an idea so ambitious that it sounded almost impossible, a state-of-the-art school that would transform Ridgeway's future. Whitmore believed if Ridgeway had one of the best public schools in Minnesota, families would stay, new families would move in, and the town's economy could stabilize around education instead of manufacturing. He promised laboratories that rivaled universities, an auditorium large enough for statewide competitions, a library equipped with computers before most homes even had them, and even a small planetarium, an absurdly futuristic addition for a small town. Somehow, through grants, campaigning, and relentless persuasion, he convinced the state to fund it. Construction began in 1982, and 2 years later Ridgeway Academy opened its doors. Students who first walked into the school described it like stepping into the future. The hallways were wide and bright. The floors reflected the lights like polished mirrors. The science labs had new equipment still smelling of packaging. The library had brand new shelves, hundreds of books, and 15 computers, a number unheard of for a public school at the time. The auditorium had professional-grade lighting and sound systems. The gymnasium could host tournaments. The building looked less like a high school and more like a small college campus. Enrollment jumped immediately. Families from nearby districts requested transfers. Teachers applied from across the state hoping to work in a district that seemed to be reinventing itself. For nearly a decade, Ridgeway Academy thrived. The robotics team competed nationally. The band performed across the state. Sports teams finally had proper facilities. Students from the 80s and early 90s still speak about those years with nostalgia. After-school events, science fairs, packed football games, and the sense that they were part of something successful. Ridgeway's population even started growing again. New housing developments were built near the school. The town felt alive, but beneath the success, slow changes had already started. The population bump didn't last. Manufacturing jobs kept disappearing. Families who moved in left again within a few years. Enrollment began dropping. At the same time, the building was expensive to maintain. The heating system struggled through Minnesota winters. The computer lab needed updates, but the budget was shrinking. Teachers started asking where the money was going, but they never got a clear answer. In 1999, the truth finally came out. A Minneapolis journalist, reviewing financial documents, discovered that large portions of the district's budget were being funneled into a private consulting company. When the investigation went deeper, it was revealed that the company was secretly owned by Superintendent Whitmore himself. Over years, he had siphoned hundreds of thousands of dollars meant for Ridgeway's maintenance, salaries, and equipment. When reporters tried to reach him, he vanished, resigned overnight, and disappeared from the town. No one ever saw him again. The scandal hit Ridgeway Academy like a hammer. Budgets were frozen completely. Repairs were postponed. Programs were cut. Teachers left for other districts. Enrollment dropped below 1,200. Maintenance crews patched leaks temporarily because permanent repairs were too expensive. The once shiny school began aging rapidly. Paint peeled, equipment failed, and classrooms became colder every winter. Even then, the school stayed open because closing it meant admitting something the community wasn't ready to face, that their greatest hope was collapsing. Then came the winter of 2003, one of the coldest in decades. Temperatures dropped to nearly -40. Snow buried cars up to their windows. The town shut down. Ridgeway Academy, already struggling with its ancient heating system, couldn't handle the pressure. The boiler failed. Without heat, pipes froze within hours. When the pressure built up, they burst one after another. Water poured through ceiling panels, destroying textbooks, soaking carpets, short-circuiting electrical lines. The gym floor swelled and buckled. The auditorium's walls blistered from moisture. The planetarium's projection equipment was ruined. By the time maintenance teams got in, the building was a disaster zone. Engineers assessed the damage and delivered the final blow. Repairs would cost over $12 million, more than the entire district budget.
Insurance barely covered a fraction. State funding was denied. Ridgeway Academy was declared unsafe and condemned. Students were relocated to other districts. Teachers scattered. The building was locked up, and the town reluctantly accepted that the place which once symbolized their revival was gone. In the years that followed, the building stood empty as nature and neglect took over. Vandals broke windows. Teenagers sneaked in to spray paint walls. Copper thieves stripped wiring. Rain leaked through the damaged roof. Mold spread across classrooms. Ceiling tiles crashed onto floors. Desks rusted. The library's books swelled from moisture until their pages fused together. The cafeteria became a nesting place for raccoons and stray cats. The once glorious auditorium filled with dust thick enough to leave footprints. The planetarium dome cracked, letting in leaves and snow. What had taken millions of dollars to build fell apart in less than a decade of abandonment. The community stopped speaking about it. Some people felt ashamed, others simply didn't want to remember. Realtors avoided mentioning the academy's remains to potential buyers. Local officials tried repeatedly to propose demolition, but every time the cost estimate came in several $1 million, plans stalled. Ridgeway, already struggling economically, couldn't justify spending that much money to tear down a building that no one used anymore. So it stood, year after year, a monument to a dream that collapsed under mismanagement and misfortune. Urban explorers occasionally entered and posted videos online. They walked through the silent hallways where lockers hung open like broken jaws. They filmed classrooms still holding faded posters and student artwork from the 90s. They stepped into the gym, the floor warped like waves. They panned across the library's ruined shelves. They stood beneath the cracked planetarium dome. What they captured was the ghost of a place that once aimed to be extraordinary, now reduced to rubble, mold, and memories. Former students who return usually stand outside, never going in. They remember what the building smelled like when it was new, how the floors shined, how teachers stayed late to help with projects, how the auditorium lights sparkled during performances. Seeing it now feels like seeing a childhood memory rotting in real time. Some get emotional. Others simply walk away quietly. Many residents hope the building will be demolished someday, not out of anger but because they want closure. They want the wound to finally heal, but demolition remains unlikely. The building contains asbestos, lead paint, and mold, all expensive to remove. The town doesn't have the funding, the state doesn't consider it a priority, and private investors have no interest. Renovating it would cost more than building a new school from scratch. So Ridgeway Academy remains in limbo, too damaged to use, too costly to remove, too painful to fix. Today, if you walk up to the chain-link fence surrounding the campus, you can still see the outlines of the dream Ridgeway once had. The cracked basketball court, the rusting goalposts, the faded school logo near the front entrance, all reminders of a time when people believed this building would change everything. The wind whistles through broken windows. Birds nest where students once studied. The flagpole stands empty. The parking lot is cracked and filled with weeds growing through the asphalt. Ridgeway Academy didn't fall because of ghosts or mysteries. It fell because of economic decline, corruption, mismanagement, and a brutal winter that delivered the final blow. It is a story repeated across America. Towns that grew around one industry, lost it, tried to reinvent themselves, and failed. The building at the end of that forgotten road is a symbol of ambition outrunning reality, of leadership betraying trust, and of communities struggling against forces bigger than themselves. If you stand long enough outside the building, you can almost imagine what it once was: students rushing to class, teachers preparing lessons, laughter echoing from the cafeteria. And then you look at it now, silent and decaying, and you understand how quickly a place can go from a community's greatest hope to an abandoned relic hidden behind trees. Ridgeway Academy still stands, but only as a reminder of what could have been and what was lost when the promises that built it collapsed. It is no longer a school, no longer a community center, no longer a symbol of progress. It is simply a monument to a forgotten dream, left to be reclaimed slowly by time, weather, and silence. A community's greatest hope to an abandoned relic hidden behind trees. Ridgeway Academy still stands, but only as a reminder of what could have been and what was lost when the promises that built it collapsed. It is no longer a school, no longer a community center, no longer a symbol of progress. It is simply a monument to a forgotten dream, left to be reclaimed slowly by time, weather, and silence.